Maryland. It's a state that, to my surprise, has an incredible amount of lore, mythical creatures, and interesting locations, and it deserved an entire iceberg video. Good evening, everyone. My name is Boomslang. Tonight, I am covering the Maryland Iceberg. I thought it'd be fun to cover an iceberg that's relatively under the radar, compared to others about info hazards or creepypastas. This iceberg was made by Relu372, and I hope you enjoy it. I will be skipping the first tier to immediately discuss some of the stranger entries. Edgar Allan Poe. This man was a literary critic and popular writer. He was born in Boston, but passed away in Baltimore. A museum dedicated to Poe is located on Amity Street in Baltimore, and it's said that his poem, The Raven, was a direct inspiration for the name of the NFL team. Another popular site on the Poe pilgrimage is the Horse You Came In On Saloon, which is said to be the last stop the author made before he was found unconscious in a gutter in Fells Point. He entered a state of delirium and passed away a few days later. The ghost tour of the bar claims that you can often see his ghost wandering the area. Frank Zappa. Zappa was a music icon and a Baltimore native. He was known for his incredible output in concept albums, musical talent, and views on education and religion. He's immortalized in Baltimore with a statue and a Frank Zappa Day declared by a recent city mayor. Assateague Island Ponies. These feral horses are descendants of horses left by landowners in the late 17th century. The owners would often bring these livestock to the islands to avoid the taxation and fencing laws imposed by the British on the mainland. The herd is split into two smaller groups, one on Assateague Island, another on the Virginian Chincoteague Island. The Maryland herd is managed by the National Park Service, while the other is managed by a volunteer fire company. Overall, 150 horses are allowed to stay on the island, and the herd is regularly culled to ensure that they don't overgraze or take over the island. Foals are occasionally culled from the herd and auctioned, with the proceeds going to the volunteer fire department. Frederick Douglass. Douglass was an abolitionist, well known for his impressive skills in speech delivery and composition. He escaped from slavery in Maryland, which is why he's on this iceberg. He actively campaigned for the abolishment of slavery and served as a counterexample to many naysayers at the time who claimed that slaves had limited intellectual capacity. When asked by more radical abolitionists why he often engaged in dialogue with slaveholders, he was quoted as saying, "I would unite with anybody to do right, and with no one to do wrong." Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a dedicated agent of the Underground Railroad, often helping slaves escape from plantations to the north in Canada. Tubman was born in slavery in Dorchester County, Maryland in 1822, and escaped to Philadelphia in 1849. She made multiple trips back to her home state to bring her relatives out of captivity and helped dozens of slaves escape to the north in Canada. The Wire. This crime drama is set in Baltimore and follows various organizations in the city and their individual relationships to law enforcement. Much of the show is dramatization of true events that occurred in the city. The series was produced by David Simon, a former police reporter, and ran from 2002 to 2008. At the time, it received little attention, but after its run ended, The Wire quickly earned a place as one of the best television shows of all time. John Wilkes Booth. The assassin of President Lincoln was born in Maryland and escaped there to attempt to avoid federal authorities. He later crossed into Virginia, along with his accomplice, David Harold, and was promptly shot after fleeing into a barn to escape federal troops. Tier 3. Adnan Syed. Syed was put in prison after being accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend, Hai Min Lee, in Baltimore. He was serving a life sentence that started in 1999. In 2014, a podcast that covered the case was released, titled Serial. The podcast exploded in popularity, resulting in some 300 million downloads worldwide, and increasing interest in the podcast as a format for discussing true crime. Increasing scrutiny of the sentence given to Syed led to his release in October 2022, although prosecutors are considering initiating a new trial. The Goat Man. The Goat Man is a popular urban legend. This creature has variants in Maryland, Louisiana, and Texas. The Maryland incarnation originates from the 1970s. Multiple dog disappearances in Prince George County were attributed to this monster. The Goat Man is said to be a hermit-like creature who lives deep in the woods near Beltsville. Popular myths vary, with some sticking to the hermit interpretation. Others state that the Goat Man was once a man who was driven wild by teens who murdered his goat herd. The more bizarre version of the tale is that he's an escaped experiment from the Beltsville Agricultural Center, a facility owned by the USDA. The USDA later released a long statement that in essence said, "No, we didn't make a goat monster. We swear." As all conspiracy theorists know, the more organizations deny a theory, the greater the likelihood that it's true. Look at Denver. The popular myth of a creature hunting young lovers outside Beltsville is alive and well, as an image of the Goat Man went viral in 2015 and sparked additional interest in this cryptid. Baltimore accent. The Baltimore accent is often described as a changing of words, known as a fronting back vowel to linguists. For example, bureau becomes bureau, and goose becomes goose. Accents vary throughout the various districts and neighborhoods. Multiple different dialects are present in the city. Blair Witch Project. This famous found footage film was both set and filmed in Maryland. Small parts of the movie were shot in Burkittsville. The town was not well known for its creepy locations. Outside of Spook Hill, where Civil War-era ghosts were said to push idling cars up hills, in an area said to be the former dwelling place of the Snallygaster, a dragon that was said to have laid an egg somewhere around the town. Saying the word Snallygaster brings me such joy. Most of the film was made in Patapsco Valley State Park, but the establishing shots of the town and the falsified story of the Blair Witch brought a lot of fans streaming into Burkittsville looking for paranormal creatures. Interesting note, the mayor of the town had never had to deal with fans entering and taking away property as souvenirs, so she called the former mayor of Amity, a place that attracted a lot of attention after the release of the original Amityville Horror, for help. Fortunately for the townspeople, the hype died when the second film failed in the box office. You'll probably have more luck finding creepy things in Patapsco Valley State Park. A popular spot is commonly called Hell House. This abandoned gazebo and the surrounding abandoned structures were once the site for St. Mary's, a theological college that was abandoned in 1972. To me, this looks like an interesting spot to visit late at night. Tier 4. Chessie. Chessie is the Chesapeake Bay's very own aquatic monster. The cryptid has been seen in various sightings in the area since 1943 and roughly resembles the Loch Ness Monster in descriptions given by locals. The most recent sighting occurred in 2014 when a man sitting in his car near the river reported seeing a 25-foot-long serpentine creature in the water. Chessie also served as an icon for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service throughout the 80s. Now, the creature dubbed Chessie was a manatee who entered the bay in 1994 before being rescued and returned to Florida. The manatee was last seen in the Bay Area in 2011. Boring, Maryland. This is an unincorporated township located roughly north of Baltimore. Its name comes from the town's first postmaster. It was originally called Fairview, later switching names because of the fact that a Fairview already existed on the railroad line that ran through the town. Accident, Maryland. Accident is in Garrett County, Maryland. The tract of land that became the town was surveyed by Mr. Deakins, a man given land by King George II. Deakins called the area of land the Accident Tract. The land was later split up and given away to Revolutionary War soldiers as a payment for their service. This land was sold, later incorporated into the town of Accident, Maryland in 1918. State sport is jousting. This entry is easily explainable. Maryland was the first state in the U.S. to adopt an official sport, making jousting the state sport in 1962. There's a state championship for jousting that's been held every year since 1950. Large Salvadoran population. Langley Park, Edmonston, and Brentwood, Maryland, have the largest groups of residents from El Salvador. Many are descendants and/or refugees from a federal program that granted protection for those fleeing civil war and the earthquakes that wrecked the country in the late 80s. DC area has world's largest Ethiopian diaspora. This one is also self-explanatory. Alexandria City has the largest concentration in the metro area, with some 18% of residents hailing from Ethiopia. PG County, wild zebras. This was a recent event that happened in Prince George County. 5 zebras had escaped an exotic animal breeding farm in the fall of 2021. Multiple sightings were reported in the area of this small herd, and 3 were successfully caught. 2 members of the zebra dazzle later returned to their farm, seemingly of their own volition, almost 4 months after their initial escape. Tier 5. Jonathan Luna. Jonathan Luna was a Baltimore assistant prosecutor for the Department of Justice. He was found in a ditch near his car in Lancaster County in 2003, with 36 stab wounds extending over his body, a large wound on the top of his head, most likely caused when he fell to the ground. Luna was working on a case involving a bank robbery at the time. His death was ruled a homicide due to the stab wounds and a fingernail wound that was caused by Luna attempting to defend himself. The case remains unsolved. Moll Dyer. Moll Dyer was a 17th century resident of St. Mary's County. In the brutal winter of 1697, she was accused of witchcraft and causing a plague that was devastating the residents of the area. A mob set fire to her hut while she was still inside, but she escaped both the fire and the crowd that was out for her blood. She was found days later, dead of hypothermia, and stuck to a large rock. Dyer's body was taken away, and an imprint of her right hand remained on the rock. It's said that this event was a sign that she had placed a curse on the entire county. Touching the rock is said to cause dizziness and illness. The rock is currently in Tudor Hall, Leonardtown. Black Aggie. Black Aggie is a statue of a hooded woman in the Druid Ridge Cemetery in Pikesville, Maryland. The statue was made by a famous sculptor named Augustus St. Gaudens and commissioned by Henry Adams, the great-grandson of President John Adams. Henry had the statue made to commemorate his deceased wife, who passed away after drinking chemicals from her photography equipment. The title of the statue is simply Grief. The draped statue sparked multiple urban legends that were popular throughout the 50s and 60s. It's said that her eyes glow red at night, and that if you sat in her lap, you would be dead within 2 weeks. Due to multiple acts of vandalism and the constant crowds of people trying to sneak in, the family in charge of the property had the statue moved to the Smithsonian in 1967. The statue was later moved to the Dolly Madison House in Lafayette Square in 1998. By the way, I just realized I had passed the statue before. When I was 10, I went to the Dolly Madison House with my family, and I faintly remember seeing the statue in the area behind the museum. Hoy-toiter accent. This dialect is commonplace in small parts of Maryland and the Outer Banks in North Carolina. It gets its name from the way people pronounce phrases like high tide, like hoy-toid. Crybaby Bridge. This bridge is on the border of Prince George and Arundel counties. It's said that a teenager retreated to this bridge after giving birth. After being abandoned by her boyfriend and harassed by her family, the legend states that she, along with her child, jumped in the waters underneath the bridge and drowned. Another variation of the story claims that she was murdered by her father and the body was dumped off the bridge. Either way, locals call the bridge Crybaby Bridge, as it's said that the cries of a child can be heard at night if you cross the bridge, and a ghostly sedan will follow people who try to cross on foot. Bradford Bishop. This man has been on the FBI 10 Most Wanted Fugitive lists before. He allegedly bludgeoned his wife, mother, and 3 sons to death in Bethesda, Maryland, on March 1st, 1976. He disposed of the bodies in a shallow grave, which he then set on fire. It's suspected that he was set off by a tension with his wife and general unhappiness with his desk job. Bishop took out his queen. He was an Army counterintelligence officer, which probably helped him evade detection. The last sighting of him was in 1994, where a former neighbor of his saw a man highly resembling Bishop entering a car in Switzerland. Oxon Hill, Popeye's chicken stabbing. Rico McLean, a 32-year-old man, was in line to get a popular chicken sandwich that had been recently released at a local Popeyes. Another man by the name of Kevin Davis cut in line in front of McLean. A heated argument broke out between the two men, resulting in McLean stabbing Davis for daring to slow him down on his quest to get a sandwich. Davis sadly passed away. His attacker was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Tier 6. Kanika Powell. Kanika Powell was an Army veteran, working as a security contractor. She worked at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland. She later became a full-time employee, assisting with many classified projects for the Department of Homeland Security. She had a frightening experience with a stalker. This random man pretended to be an FBI agent and insisted that she open up her apartment door while she was at home. She refused, told about this incident to her friends and family. 4 days later, another person showed up and claimed to have left a package for her. Once again, she didn't open the door and waited until the individual left. Powell ran some errands and returned home. Someone was waiting for her in the hallway. She was shot multiple times and passed away August 28, 2008. Her assailant still has not been identified. Bahad Reshkumar Chetan Bahai Patel. This man also earned a spot on the FBI Most Wanted list in 2015. He is wanted for the alleged murder of his wife in a Dunkin' Donuts, as the couple had a dispute, disappeared behind a rack, and only Patel emerged. He fled Hanover and was last seen in Newark, New Jersey. Sykesville Monster. This cryptid was last seen near Sykesville in 1981, was originally spotted by a trucker passing through the town. The trucker claimed that he had seen a 7-foot-tall creature by the side of the road. The monster promptly fled to the woods after this sighting. Descriptions of it match up closely with the popular image of Bigfoot. Big Liz. Big Liz is said to have been a plantation slave in the Chesapeake Bay area. She was a spy for the Union in the Civil War era. Her master was a Southern sympathizer, hiding a large stash of Confederate funds. Liz's master figured out that she was a mole and decided to get rid of her. He took her to the location of the money and had her rebury the funds in another location in a swamp. He pointed to a sapling and asked her to place the sapling over the site to help mark it. When she bent over to remove the sapling, he took off her head with a powerful axe blow and left her body to the elements. Nowadays, DeCourcy Bridge runs over Greenbrier Swamp, and it's said that Big Liz appears on the highway and manifests as a headless ghost. If you head there in your car in the middle of the night, honk your horn 3 times, flash your headlights twice, and exit the car. Big Liz will appear, her eyes glowing red, and beckon for you to follow her into the swamp. There's no guarantee that you will run back. Mr. Trash Wheel. This entry is a water wheel that has been remade into a trash-catching device. It's 50 feet long, weighing close to 10,000 pounds. It has 2 booms extending from its body that help to guide trash into its mouth at the head of Jones Falls. The trash is taken up into a conveyor belt and disposed of in a dumpster located under a canopy. The trash is later transported to a nearby incineration complex and burned to help provide electricity for the area. Mr. Trash Wheel collects around 38,000 pounds of trash each day, helps prevent a large amount of debris from reaching the open ocean. Longest escalator in the Western Hemisphere is at Wheaton Metro Station. Once again, kudos to Relu 372 for making my job a little easier. Wheaton Station has the longest set of single-span escalators in the Western Hemisphere, as each of them are 230 feet long and rise for over 115 feet.
Hey there! Come on, you! I was looking for three hooded morons. Oh, you there? Jesus!
Special K presence in Carroll County. I really don't want to dash my chances of being monetized as I get this close to the requirements, so for the sake of you seeing this video on your feed, I'm referring to this organization as the Special K. Kellogg, please don't kill me. In 1999, Maryland was home to well over a dozen different organizations dedicated to harassment of various people, the most powerful of which was the Special K, which had 6 chapters throughout the area. It also had one of the oldest groups in the US, which is still active, known as the Invincible Empire Knights chapter, which actually held rallies in Annapolis up until the late 90s. Fortunately, these older chapters' influence has begun to wane, but posters for the Special K still continue to be distributed and posted in Carroll County. Joppatown murder cannibalism incident. If you're super squeamish, fast forward about 30 seconds. In 2012, a 21-year-old Morgan State University student named Alexander Kenyua was charged with first-degree murder and assault, along with second-degree assault of a 37-year-old man named Agdiai Cody. The human remains of Agdiai Cody were found in a tin by Alexander Kenyua's brother inside of their family home. After his indictment, multiple messages by Kenyua were found online where he actively discussed death cults and other much darker things. Tier 7. The Snallygaster. I discussed this creature earlier on the iceberg, in the Blair Witch entry. Another interesting fact about this dragon is that German settlers gave the beast the nickname Scheller Geist, translating to quick ghost. The most famous sighting of this creature was in 1899, where an instance was spotted traveling from Ohio to Maryland. It made a brief stopover in Crafton's Gap near Burkittsville to lay an egg, prompting even more hysteria from people who were concerned that even more snallygasters would be wandering around the area. In 1932, another snallygaster was reported to have entered a moonshine distillery in Frog Hollow before passing away suddenly and falling into an alcoholic vat. The Dwyo. This entry is also known as the Wolfman of Maryland. The Dwyo is a 6-foot-tall wolf that stands like a man and is considered the mortal enemy of the snallygaster. It was a popular myth in the Blue Ridge Mountains and made its appearance in Frederick County in 1944. Witnesses described a wolf on its hind legs, running through the woods and letting out frightful screams. Another sighting was made in 1965, this time cementing the beast in local legend. Here's a portion of an article in the Frederick News Post that described the 1965 encounter. Near the woods of Gambrel State Park, John Becker went out in his yard to investigate a strange noise. It was getting dark. He had started back to the house when he saw something moving toward him. It was as big as a bear, had long black hair, a bushy tail, and growled like a wolf or a dog in anger. As it got closer, it stood up on its hind legs and attacked him. Becker fought the creature until it ran into the woods, leaving him, his wife, and children in horror. Deciding to remain anonymous under the alias John Becker, he filed a report with local state police, telling of an attack by a mysterious monster that he called a Dwyo. The Dwyo continued to be sighted through the rest of the 20th century. At some point, I like a film that is like King Kong vs. Godzilla, but for a battle between the Snallygaster and the Dwyo. 9 + 10 = 21 video is from Baltimore. This is a popular older Vine, in which a man asks a young boy for the answer to 9 + 10, to which the kid replies, 21. The man then says, "No, it's not, stupid." A popular report surfaced, claiming that the kid ran away from his home in Baltimore after the video went viral, but that report was later found to be false. Montgomery County running guy. This man is commonly known as Larry. Larry has 2 Facebook pages dedicated to sightings of him running or walking. Since the late 80s, he's been seen so many times outside, running and walking, that people eventually banded together to collect their photos of Larry. Many in the county are divided as to if this constitutes a privacy violation, but others defend it by saying it's honoring his status as a local celebrity. Ellicott City is the most haunted city on the East Coast. This city features a wide variety of local legends and haunted locations involving the supernatural. A couple of notable locations include Mount Ida, a manor that was inhabited by several different families, all of whom passed away during their residence there. It's said that the sounds of jingling keys, held by the ghost of Miss Ida Tyson, can be heard in the passageways of the house at night. In addition, the Fire Station Museum is another hotspot for paranormal activity. Doors randomly shut for no reason in the station, and stomping boots often reverberate in the hallways. Chinese conspiracy theory of COVID-19 originating in Fort Detrick. This was a disinformation campaign made by the CCP. The CCP actively funded a campaign that claimed that COVID-19 originated from a U.S. military base in Fort Detrick. Some attempts to spread this message included rap music and falsified social media posts. Fort Detrick is a U.S. lab dedicated to researching and fighting various infectious diseases, but this theory was quickly shattered after it was revealed that the virus originated from Wuhan. Once again, China was disproven. The Wizard of South Mountain. This entry refers to the son of a pair of German farmers who were originally from Dutch settlements in Pennsylvania. The Zittel family moved to an area beneath South Mountain in Maryland in 1811 and established a small settlement known by locals as Zittelstown. They gave birth to a son named Michael Zittel Jr. Michael soon became a well-known folk healer who regularly healed the afflicted with the use of a occult book he called A Friend in Need, or Simple Science. He became well known as the Wizard of South Mountain, was recorded healing an open gun wound through the use of spells, atrophy in infants, and convincing horse thieves to return stolen animals. The wizard still continues to influence the people of South Mountain to this day. Some mountain shamans still use his spells to heal burns, and even restart stoves. Some of his books still survive, and his published copies are mixes of black magic and scripture, often in German. Oyster Wars. This was a conflict between Virginia and Maryland oyster harvesters that lasted for over 200 years. Conflict had always existed between companies looking to harvest the increasingly valuable oysters. Despite several different treaties, overharvesting continued to be a massive problem, and cracking down on illegal harvesting became increasingly harder to enforce. The situation got even worse. In 1882, a small navy made out of police officer craft and local militiamen had a naval battle with poachers. Another firefight broke out in 1959, resulting in a poacher dying and another poacher being wounded. In 1962, John F. Kennedy enacted laws that brought the Potomac River Fisheries Commission into being. After 2 centuries, the oyster wars were finally resolved. Tier 8. Friendship Heights Time Sculptures Conspiracy. The primary mention of this comes from a 2022 Reddit post. This post is from the user Fancy Rat Fridays. There's something weird with time symbolism scattered around Friendship Heights. If you keep your eyes open, you'll start noticing sundials, hourglasses, fancy clocks, and other timepieces pretty much everywhere in public art, on buildings, and even inlaid in the sidewalk. I know that, at some point, one of the buildings paid an artist to do a bunch of timekeeping related art pieces, but it goes way beyond that. It's in the logos of businesses and in public art in parks. Why? I don't know. I'm sure a more conspiracy-minded person than me could connect the dots with no problem. The post ends right there. There's a lot of speculation on that thread, but people theorize that the symbolism points towards a time-related government agency, or something along those lines. There's little coverage of this theory outside of that thread. Giant crab at the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay. This was intended as a joke entry by the Iceberg author. So far, the largest recorded crab harvested in the bay was a blue crab that measured 10 inches from tip to tip along its carapace and weighed about a pound. Overall, this one is dwarfed by other crabs like the Japanese spider crab, Ilchester Tunnel, Blinkman. This is a creepypasta made about the town of Ilchester, Maryland. The Blinkman is the ghost of an old blind homeless man who was killed by an oncoming train in the first half of the 20th century. If you stand in the middle of the tunnel at 11 p.m. and stare into the depths of the tunnel without blinking for an entire hour, the blink man will appear before you. Whenever you blink, it will come a step closer. If you break your line of sight and continue to blink, the blink man will eventually reach you and stand right in front of your face. He'll come so close to the point that his eyelashes brush your face. If you blink, and you will die a horrendous death. UMD Ritual. Once again, the specter of demonetization is rearing its ugly head, so I'll refer to this as bestiality when I do mention it. This tale was a tale told by a friend of the Iceberg author's dad. His friend claimed that the initial ritual to an unnamed group of fraternities involved this act. Relu372 said to take this tale with a massive grain of salt, so I leave the truth of that story up to you. Kent County doesn't exist. This is a joke entry made by the author to add some more mystique to the bottom tier. Kent County in Maryland does exist, or so they say. It's probably the place where the snallygaster hangs out and where COVID originated. Republic of Maryland in modern-day Liberia. This entry refers to a small republic called the Republic of Maryland that existed from the years 1834 to 1857 before becoming part of modern-day Liberia. It was founded by members of the Maryland State Colonization Society. P.F. Chang's in Towson that plays traditional Chinese trap music. A local P.F. Chang's near Goucher College that has played traditional trap music at various times in the past. According to the Iceberg author, it was so loud that it could be heard clearly. And that is the last entry on this iceberg. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to make. Relu372 has expressed the possibility of creating an updated version someday, so if that ever happens, I might make a brief follow-up that covers any new entries, provided I get to say Snallygaster a few more times. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and good night. Also, I hope you have a happy new year.